The most common terrarium care questions. Every gardener and terrarium designer faces problems regarding the care of the terrariums that they create. There can be lots of different questions that you may need answers for. So, let's review and answer frequently asked questions about terrariums in this video. So subscribe to our channel to watch videos like this and enjoy beautiful terrarium designs. You also have the unique opportunity to get beautiful geometric glass containers through our Ceylon Moss Studio channel. So let's focus on the frequently asked questions about terrariums and find answers to them. Here I will highlight 15 common problems. Almost all your problems are covered by it. Study everything well. What type of soil works best in terrariums? Which plants are suitable for closed terrariums? Health of terrarium plants. Plants in your terrarium are sticking out of containers or become overgrown. This doesn't look nice. Can you keep the same plants in the terrarium, and what should you do? How to prune the plants. Why do terrarium plants don't need much water or fertilizing, but they still grow and remain healthy for a long time? What kind of lighting is best for my terrarium? Where should I place it? How much water does a closed terrarium need? There is water on a terrarium glass or it is fogged up. Why is this happening? What should I do in this situation? Which animals are suitable for closed terrariums? Do terrariums smell? Do terrariums need air? Can terrariums be made of plastic? What are the benefits of a moss terrarium? How long does a closed terrarium last? What type of soil works best in terrariums? The soil layer serves as the nutrient layer for the plants in your terrarium. The right fertilizer mix must be achieved. And this is dependent on the type of plant you are using in your terrarium. Cocoa coir, peat moss or houseplant soil works with most plants, besides succulents which prefer a well-drained inorganic medium. Some people choose to make their own soil, but if you're short on time, garden store houseplant soil works just fine. For succulents, you'll need soil with a sand or gravel mixture. Which plants are suitable for closed terrariums? Plants are the most important inhabitants for a closed terrarium. Since a closed terrarium is hermetically sealed, no new oxygen can get in. Without plants, animals in a closed terrarium could not survive for long and would suffocate. Besides, plants are of course also very beautiful to look at. It is especially interesting to watch them conquer their environment in your closed terrarium. Of course, the question arises, which plants are suitable for a closed terrarium and which you should rather not use? In principle, all plants whose natural environment you can recreate are suitable for closed terrariums. There are easier plants, like moss, or more difficult plants, like orchids or carnivorous plants. Especially orchids are difficult to keep, but it is not impossible. Moss is the best recommended plant for terrariums. There are extremely many types of moss, all of which look quite different. Some of them you may not even have noticed, even if they are right under you. Most species of moss are incredibly hardy. Hot and cold temperatures do not bother them. Some survive absolute drought and many also need hardly any nutrients. Health of terrarium plants? To keep the plants healthy inside the terrarium, you need to care for them occasionally. One of the procedures is cleaning a glass container. Make sure to remove all the dust and excess water from the sides of the container. Plants in your terrarium are sticking out of containers or become overgrown. This doesn't look nice. Can you keep the same plants in the terrarium, and what should you do? Even though terrarium conditions limit the growth of plants, they still grow, but much slower. You will be able to enjoy your terrarium design for months or even a year without pruning the plants. But you can keep the same plants in the terrarium if you successfully prune the plants. Also make sure that plants are healthy with no mold. Remove any dead leaves. How to prune the plants. For cutting leaves and vines, I would recommend getting pruning shears like these or any other scissors with a long tip. If any leaves or vines fall while pruning, use long tip tweezers to get them from the bottom of the terrarium container. Never leave them on the soil. For small leaves, you can use your fingers to pinch them from the stem. Then, also remove any cuttings with tweezers if they fall to the bottom. Even though plants grow at different speeds, you should aim for 1-year plant life in terrarium. After a year, you should remove the old plants and exchange them with new ones. Make sure to prune the roots of new plants before planting them in your terrarium. Air plants tolerate root trimming very well, as they are not main organs which provide them with all the nutrients. And then, after around 2 to 3 years, you should change the soil and the whole design of the terrarium. Different plants in your terrarium may need their own ways of trimming, pruning. Why do terrarium plants don't need much water or fertilizing, but they still grow and remain healthy for a long time? Plants in terrariums require misting and watering from time to time. As plants in this closed ecosystem use the water again and again, due to condensation, you don't need to water them too often. Fertilizing plants is sometimes recommended, but you might skip it if you wish. Plants survive on sunlight and nutrients from the soil. Terrariums often don't require much care. What kind of lighting is best for my terrarium? Where should I place it? It is best to place your terrarium somewhere with no direct sunlight, as it will burn and boil your plants inside the container. There are different types of sun exposure, with western and southern being the strongest ones. Eastern sunlight is received during the dawn on the eastern side of the building and northern side of the house. So, make sure to put your terrarium away from strong sun rays. Not enough sunlight can also cause some plants to grow leggy. This happens because a plant is trying to grow higher to get more sunlight. Putting your terrarium inside the room or near the window facing the weaker sun exposure site, in direct light, will be perfect. Your plants don't need too much light, some natural bright light will be ideal. If your terrarium is constantly in a darker spot, you can add artificial lighting, like a strip light lamp or fluorescent light. Next is a problem that affects many people. How much water does a closed terrarium need? The amount of water is absolutely crucial for a closed terrarium and will ensure in the long run whether it survives or not. The exact amount depends on the size of your tank and the amount of plants you have. While there is no way to determine this across the board, luckily there are a few tricks for this as well. Just like any plant, your closed terrarium needs water. The amount of water is largely dependent on the size of your container, the kind of substrate you're using, and especially the kinds of plants in your closed terrarium. How can you see if it's too wet? There's no simple answer. It really is a balancing act. Maybe your closed terrarium has too much water. We'll now look at the opposite problem. Your closed terrarium has too much water and you need to get rid of it, or else your plants will drown. In a healthy, not too wet substrate, small bubbles of air can form which your plant's roots use to get oxygen. If your soil is too wet, it has a look less of these air bubbles. There are a few signs indicating that your closed terrarium has too much water. The first sign of too much water is your jar being fogged up so that you cannot really see you plants and animals anymore. If this condition stays constant over multiple days, your plants will start to become a little yellowish. Now you'll have to take action. Open up your closed terrarium so the excess water can evaporate. To speed things up, use a paper towel or a lint-free cloth to wipe the inside of your container. As soon as all droplets of water are gone, close it back up and wait for the next day. If it's still fogged up the entire day, repeat the process. Condensation on sides of a terrarium glass is completely fine, but can also cause problems if you ignore it completely. When you water your terrarium, the moisture evaporates and is left as droplets on the glass. If you overwater your terrarium, too much moisture in the soil will cause mold formation and rotting. Closed terrariums are at higher risk because condensation builds up inside and can't escape. No water should be leaking from the soil, it should only be wet. If you have overwatered the soil, take some tissues and absorb any excess water. With closed terrariums, you should open a lid from time to time for ventilation, and to wipe the glass. Avoid putting the terrarium under the sun, as it will cause a very high temperature inside the terrarium, causing fogged up glass. Making a small hole in the terrarium can help solve this problem. You can also spray your glass with anti-fog spray. Which animals are suitable for closed terrariums? Here, too, a variety of candidates come into consideration. However, small insects, such as beetles, but also spiders, snails and worms are eligible. Two critters that are perfect for closed terrariums, but are not actually insects, are springtails and woodlice. Both feed on plant debris, making them the perfect cleanup crew for your closed terrarium. Do terrariums smell? In general, no. They actually smell quite nice with an earthy odor. But, if yours happens to smell rotten, it's most likely a sign of root rotting or overwatering. Do terrariums need air? Yes. But plants in airtight, or closed terrariums, recycle air. During the day, sunlight promotes the growth of sugars during the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis converts carbon dioxide into oxygen, releasing it into the terrarium. In a closed terrarium, you may want to remove the lid to let fresh air into the terrarium, but a closed terrarium will not damage the plants. Can terrariums be made of plastic? Sure, plastic containers, like those made out of acrylic, work just fine. You can also buy anti-fog plastic containers, which prevent condensation buildup and allows better visibility. These are generally more expensive. What are the benefits of a moss terrarium? Although you may think of traditional plants when you envision a terrarium, preserved moss that is no longer alive, looks great in terrariums. It is easy to maintain and can last for a while without needing to be replaced. Moss for terrariums can come in different colors and textures, such as lime green. Reindeer moss and sheet moss work well, and moss also pairs well with sand and rocks. If you are creating your own terrarium, you can also use live moss. Last one is, how long does a closed terrarium last? If you take proper care of your closed terrarium and meet all the conditions in it optimally, it really will last forever. If the water, oxygen, and nutrient cycles in an enclosed terrarium are all met, there will always be enough resources to sustain life in it. The oldest closed terrarium in the world belongs to David Latimer of England. He built it back in 1960, making it 63 years old today. In all that time he never opened his closed terrarium and it still sprouts. If nothing happens to the closed terrarium and it continues to stand where it did, it will last forever. So I think you will be able to take care of your terrarium very successfully with these answers. If you have any further problems, mention them below. We will discuss them in depth later on. If the video is good, please like and add your comments below. And subscribe to our Ceylon Moss Studio channel to watch more videos like this. Thank you. See you again in a video like this.